What's that? Josh made a garbage Kingdom Hearts review? Alright, word. I know the call.
もしもし。
So this is the first game in the Yakuza series I've played, and it was on my wishes for a while, so when it was on sale for $5 I decided to buy it. There's a chance I like Yakuza 0 because it's my first one I played in the franchise, so it's fresh to me, but I'm going to be reviewing the game based off its own merit and not how it fares in comparison to the entire series. I also don't want to edit this forever, so a lot of this is going to be simplified. If you really want to know what the game's like, you should play it yourself. And just so we're clear, I only made this review so I can one-up Josh. Yakuza's story revolves around Kiryu being framed for a murder in a really small plot of land called the Empty Lot, which turns out to be essential to the Tojo clan, which is basically like the granddaddy of the Yakuza, because it will allow them to own all of Kamurocho, which makes them a ton of money. After being framed for the murder, Kiryu is then forced to leave the Dojima family, which is like a small subscript in the entirety of the Tojo clan, in order to find the murderer and prove his innocence to the clan, while at the same time trying to find the owner of the Empty Lot to prevent the Dojima family from a complete monopoly on the entire city, thus becoming the strongest family in the Tojo clan. Yakuza's story is divided up into chapters, and every 2 chapters or so, the game will switch perspectives to the game's second protagonist, Mr. Majima Goro, who is a nice contrast to Kiryu because of his natural swagger and sarcastic attitude, where Kiryu, much like my narration, is pretty emotionless and stone cold. Majima, who is in another city much like Kamurocho, is also attempting to re-enter the Yakuza after a past mistake that gets him kicked out of the family, so he's assigned to manage a cabaret, which is like a club for lonely Asian men who work day jobs, to pay his dues to the family. He eventually befriends a blind girl who may or may not have the entire Yakuza world on her tail, and then Majima is forced to choose between the blind girl and the Yakuza. So in summary, in case that didn't make any sense, the main story is around 20 chapters, so 30-ish hours, and is nothing groundbreaking, but it has enough action and semi-quality cutscenes to keep plebeians like me entertained and engaged with the story, especially towards the second half when it gets a little bit more bombastic, you know what I'm saying? It gets a little bit more bombastic. Honestly, I thought the Yakuza games would have a story similar to Metal Gear Solid or Kingdom Hearts, as in barely a story at all, but I was surprised to find an actual story with a lot of highlights. Yakuza is able to go from this
ホテルでさえ出かけるときにはフロントに一声かかるよな。檻ん中のお前が何黙って出てんだよ。なあ、なあ。
to this
24時間シンデレラ
and then back to this. And still feel like it's telling a good story, while Kingdom Hearts is doing this.
Distance doesn't matter. Andy's part of their hearts, just like my friends are part of mine. You can't rip that apart.
But if the light of friendship is a form of power, the darkness of being alone is a power even greater.
So in terms of the actual gameplay, which is basically the combat, it's pretty much like the story. Nothing insane, but it's flashy enough to still be fun. The combos are pretty simple, with a main light attack combo and a couple strong attacks thrown in there to break it up. Multiply this by 3 separate fighting styles, and you have a pretty decent fighting system. To me, the highlight of Yakuza combat comes through the heat actions, which is kinda like Yakuza's version of the fatalities that vary depending on upgrades, weapons equipped, styles equipped, and where you use the heat action.
Fatality.
Although the combat can admittedly get a little bit stale towards the end of the game, especially when they start spamming the gun dudes who are completely broken, there is still a lot of upgrades to unlock. I have around 80 hours in the game, and I've yet to fully upgrade one fighting style, because I am broke and they are really expensive. Now moving on to what I feel is Yakuza 0's biggest drawing point, it's all of its side crap to do after you beat the main story. I like single player games, but if you play single player games, you know after you beat them, that's kinda it. No, who replays single player games? I don't replay single player games, you don't replay single player games, no one replays single player games. Yakuza makes up for this single player game weakness by filling their games with a bunch of extra side quests, collectibles, and activities to keep players entertained after they beat the main story. The main post-game content is in the form of Kiryu's Real Estate Royale and Majima's Club Cabaret Royale, which Majima's is a clear winner in my eyes because of its Diner Dash-like gameplay and its semi-interesting dynamic of actually learning more about the girls as you work with them.
真島さんって自己分析がすごいできる方なんですね。確かに怪しい眼帯野郎ですね。
Where Kiryu's, you just kind of make a ton of money, and that's it. The side stories are pretty good, and they flex Yakuza's strong humor the most throughout the game. There are some alright ones, but can you really name any other game where you can have a disco battle with Michael Jackson in the flesh? No, I didn't really think you could because they don't exist except for in Yakuza. The game's a 10 out of 10. Perfect. Alright, so don't get me wrong, right? A lot of the side stuff in Yakuza is garbage. I, for one, know I'm not going to be doing this. Or this. Or this. But for how much Yakuza manages to squeeze in its post game, it's surprising how much of it is actually good, especially if you can appreciate the humor. But of course, in the Game Reviewer's Manual, it states under Article 7 that a game review without a numerical rating attached to it means nothing. So, as a man of the law, I must say that Yakuza is an easy 8 out of 10, but with the inclusion of that one karaoke song, which I put in here, bumps the game up to an easy 9 out of 10 and wins Best Game Remy Played in 2020 award. A truly prestigious award, an award among awards if you will. And I've reviewed a lot of games in 2020, so Yakuza 0 should be honored to have won my approval like this, you know?